Right now, millions of Americans who keep up with world events are worried we are about to witness a false flag attack, specifically on the USS Gerald R, a United States Navy nuclear-powered aircraft carrier that is now moving through the eastern Mediterranean and toward the coast of Israel. Welcome to Partyless. Okay, so refresher. A false flag is a covert operation made to appear as though another party carried it out to justify retaliation, gain support, or to shift blame. The term originates from 16th century naval tactics of flying a friendly flag to deceive enemies. So, what do we know? Israel wants to expand. They call it the Greater Israel Project. This is not a secret. If you watched U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee the other day, in his interview with Tucker Carlson, he actually co-signs the project. Watch this.
You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right. And that would include like basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant. So that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be,
I'm not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the point.
It would be a lot of places that are now country.
Christian Zionism. I want to go back because that's where we started.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
I highly encourage you to watch that interview in full. It is truly mind-blowing. So the Greater Israel Project is an ideological and political concept. It's primarily supported by Zionists, where they seek an expanded Israeli state encompassing the occupied West Bank, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. So when people say Zionism just means Israel has a right to exist, no, they often mean they want to take over the Middle East, regardless of the brutal and bloody wars that would occur. After Huckabee's astonishing admission, Middle Eastern governments responded and denounced it roundly, which was incredible to witness. Such an insane misstatement by an actual current U.S. ambassador. It was horrifying to witness. So why is America involved in Israeli land grabs in the first place? Well, America has been indisputably occupied by Israeli operatives. AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, owns most of our politicians and our president. Visit Track AIPAC to view just how much they own our politicians. They've been working on this since Israel was created by the incredibly evil and inbred Rothschild family in 1948. Don't take my word for it, take theirs.
And Baron James, who was head of the Paris branch and the youngest of the 5 sons of our actual Rothschild, gave an astonishingly uninhibited description of the 19th century Rothschild policy of keeping it in the family. I'll quote to you from what he wrote and make you smile. In our family, we've always tried to keep love in the family. In this sense, it was more or less understood since childhood that children would never think of marrying outside the family, so that our fortune would never leave it. You couldn't write that today.
President Trump's son-in-law, Jewish Zionist Jared Kushner, while never having been elected to a single public office, is acting as a U.S. special envoy and key figure in Donald Trump's Board of Peace. Of course, if you've read 1984, you know that that's actually the Board of War, which is pushing a new Gaza redevelopment plan. He has proposed transforming the completely destroyed region into a luxury tourist destination and commercial hub, using private investment to build high-rise towers, resorts, and even a new port.
And then New Gaza. It could be a hope, it could be a destination, have a lot of industry. This deal only happened because we worked with Israel, we worked with Turkey, we worked with Qatar, we worked with Saudi, we worked with Egypt. I mean, everyone worked together. We worked with UAE. We all worked together to make this happen. I see a lot of people trying to escalate, criticizing Israel or Israelis criticizing Turkey or Qatar. Just calm down for 30 days. I think that the war's over. Let's do our best to try working together.
Sounds wonderful, right? Well, every bit of that area was once owned by people just like you and I who had babies, who had toddlers, children, grandparents, who have all been either bombed and killed into oblivion by Israel or forced to flee. So their land is now up for grabs to those preventing their return. Once again, read the book Gaza's Gravediggers by Norm Finkelstein. Reminder, he's Jewish, for those who love to scream anti-Semitism at people like me who oppose the murder of innocent children in order to steal their property. Reminder also that gay billionaire Peter Thiel, who created and funded our current Vice President J.D. Vance, owns Palantir, the AI weapon systems that have been used to murder men, women, and children in that area. Currently, Israel has forced America's hand. Trump knows Americans don't want more wars in the Middle East, but Israel is our master, and they want to expand, and they usually get what they want. They hate Muslims. They want their land. We have already bombed Iran's alleged nuclear weapons in June of 2025. They didn't have any, but Israel claimed that they did, and Trump was able to bomb the site and avert an all-out war. But that didn't satisfy Israel. Netanyahu is currently claiming Iran is once again about to have a nuclear weapon, but watch him claim that again and again over the years with no basis in reality. Watch this.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
So here's what's likely about to unfold now. If Trump refuses to attack Iran first, Israel will likely bomb Iran and Iran will retaliate, likely targeting U.S. bases across the Gulf. Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, and Bahrain could become Iranian missile targets. We will be drawn into war. Specifically, I'm worried about the USS Gerald R being attacked like the Israelis attacked the USS Liberty in 1967. If you've never heard of the USS Liberty, on June 8, 1967, during the Six-Day War, the USS Liberty was operating in international waters intercepting radio communication. So it was essentially spying near the Sinai Peninsula when Israeli jets suddenly attacked. It was flying an American flag, but the Israeli jet suddenly attacked it anyway, strafing the ship and firing rockets. Crew members who had felt safe seeing Israeli aircraft days earlier were caught off guard as missiles tore through the vessel. So they even raised a second, larger American flag. It's considered a holiday flag after Israeli forces shot down the initial flag during the air attack. But Israeli forces continued to send torpedo boats, and they opened fire, even though U.S. flags were clearly flying. And we have men who have survived that attack who are still today fighting to share their story. The Israeli forces started firing torpedoes, left heavy casualties, and left the ship crippled. When the assault ended, 34 Americans were left dead, 171 were injured. That's 2/3 of the crew. And this was the deadliest attack on a U.S. naval vessel since World War II, perpetrated by our greatest ally, Israel. Our greatest ally. We know today that our men died due to Israel trying to create a false flag to draw us into their war. Today, Israel calls it anti-Semitic to even mention this attack. But tell that to the survivors from the Liberty who are still relentless about sharing what happened to them and their men that day. I mentioned the Liberty because of what we're watching in the Middle East today. So, what's going on now? The U.S. has deployed 2 aircraft carriers to the region, the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. This is one of the largest carrier presences in the area in decades, so that's not going to bode well for any of us, okay? Over 100 U.S. fighter jets, F-22s, F-35s, F-15s, and F-16s have been deployed to bases across the Middle East. Some of these deployments are historic, like F-22s touching down in Israel for the first time ever. We don't like unprecedented things. Just going to say that. it's not just fighters in the sky. So they have transport planes, aerial refueling tankers are also moving in, keeping operations sustained and extending their reach. If you check open source tracking, you can see dozens of these flights in recent weeks. And on the water, the U.S. Navy isn't just sailing carriers to the area. So they have guided missile destroyers. They have other warships patrolling strategic waters near Iran from the Red Sea to the Persian Gulf. And on the ground, reports indicate over 10,000 U.S. service members have been repositioned into that area. So, sounds like war, doesn't it? The U.S. military presence is growing, and they are signaling a major show of force. Reminder, this is all at Israel's behest. No matter what you've seen in the warmongering news, this has nothing to do with Americans, with our lives, with our safety. This is entirely due to Israeli pressure on our government and on our president. So let's talk about the Gerald R. Ford. Left its home port in Norfolk, Virginia in June 2025 and has remained continuously deployed. So that means that this ship and everybody on it has been at sea longer than 8 months, which is far longer than the usual 6 to 7 month deployment cycle. Analysts say it could remain deployed into April or May, which would break recent records for continuous time at sea. And the ship is not just floating in the ocean. There's a lot going on with that boat and the people on it. The Ford's advanced vacuum sewage system has repeatedly malfunctioned, leading to many toilets being out of service. What that means is, in actuality, crew members are putting socks, shirts, and other items into the toilets to cause them to fail. And why would they do that, you may ask? Well, first of all, it's a historic deployment. They've been at sea way longer than they should have been. And now they're being moved to a strategic area and about to be drawn into war. So they are worried about being struck in a false flag attack where the U.S. will be drawn into war with Iran. Morale on the ship is critically low. These people are missing births. They are missing deaths. They are missing their children's first steps. Please imagine being on a ship for 8 months and counting, where you don't get to see your family. You have not been able to return home. If your wife was pregnant, she's now given birth and you have an 8-month-old child and you've never met them. This is horrendous. Sailors are facing long lines, 45 minutes to use a bathroom because there's so many breakdowns across the ship, and maintenance crews are having to work 19-hour shifts to keep the system functioning. And they have around 650 toilets for 4,600 sailors, and most of them are broken. And everything is covered in literal crap, and everyone is depressed, terrified, missing their families, and they can't even find a place to go to the bathroom. And everybody on that ship is well aware of the story of the USS Liberty. So, even in leadership, they are extremely concerned about keeping the Ford at sea this long because of the strain on everybody on that boat. So, why is this carrier even being deployed to this area? Well, not for any reason to protect America. The carrier's extended time is largely due to U.S. pressure on Iran over its nuclear program, alleged nuclear program. So they've moved those two carriers, the Gerald Ford and the Abraham Lincoln, out into that area, and it's one of the strongest naval postures that Washington has taken in years. So when they had to dock in Crete recently because of the exploding toilets, there were local protests when the carrier docked, reflecting how everybody is incredibly uneasy about foreign military activity. We should not be there. Everybody knows it, and we know it too. So it appears that most Americans and even our soldiers understand that this war has nothing to do with American quality of life. But Israel has an insatiable appetite for expansion. Iran is Israel's greatest enemy, and they've long wanted to wipe them off the map. Israel is currently using our money, our men and women's lives to achieve their goals. I often feel totally helpless watching this unfold and watching world events unfold because the true reason for these things happening and their true goals seem really obvious to me. And the manipulation of the media, of Zionists, the infiltration of the Christian faith by these people who are hell-bent on brainwashing us to support a foreign country and their endless warmongering, it is horrifying to deal with. And these people will literally use the Bible against us in order to convince us to fund their evil. And they'll tell us we're going to hell if we don't. So what can we do? Well, I am just trying to raise awareness about this. If you've never heard of the USS Liberty, if you're starting to wonder why we're funding and dying in Israel's wars, if you are wondering why all of our politicians care more about a small, insanely violent Middle Eastern country who has murdered tens of thousands of children with your money, before they care for anybody suffering here in America, I beg you to begin researching what I have talked about for yourself. And above all, I beg you to begin praying for our young men and women, some of whom are currently trapped on a ship in the middle of the ocean in the Middle East, far from home, and pray that their lives are not ended in pursuit of this demonic expansionist agenda that doesn't benefit a single American life. And in spite of all of that, Christ is still king. He is still on the throne. And I will see you next time.